Well, as I mentioned before, this marks Central Electric's 75th year of providing electricity to Central Oregon residents. And I am proud to be part of this celebration, of this really impressive record of service. And I'm very privileged to be your CEO at this special time in our history. And CEC exists because back in the 1940s, for-profit power companies like Pacific Power, they wouldn't take power lines out into rural areas because it wasn't profitable. And so that first group of 9 farmers that worked together to form CEC, you see, they had a vision of a better quality of life and more efficient ways that work could get done. And it really is kind of incredible to think about today, but they had to convince their neighbors that having electricity was going to be a good thing. You see, not everybody believed that electricity was going to be beneficial in their life. And as they are today, back then, many people were resistant to change. And we all have come to realize that electricity, it was one of the greatest engineering achievements of the 20th century. And that word change, you're going to hear me say it a lot over the next several minutes. And the electric industry began changing the moment it was invented. And for years, its pace of change, it was really pretty steady and gradual until the 1990s, when the technology boom, it accelerated the pace of change in the electric industry. And much of that change that we've seen since then, it's really been pretty good, but not all of it. See, there's change that's within our control, and then there's that change that's totally out of our control, and we have to adapt to that change. But whatever its nature, change, it has one constant for us. It drives our efforts to find the best way to create value for all of you as members of CEC. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to share my perspective on the changes as we look ahead to 2016 and beyond, but I want to go through and note some of our 2015 accomplishments because they're pretty impressive. And I'm going to start with cybersecurity. And it's a topic that receives a lot of attention nowadays, and for pretty good reason. There's almost every day you hear media reports of hackers, and they've ended up breaching company databases, and they steal confidential consumer information. At CEC, we incorporate a multitude of measures to protect our members' confidential data. Now, in 2015, our information systems personnel and our security systems, they successfully stopped more than 96,000 attempted cyber attack against CEC's network. And I look at this every month. The number of cyber attacks, it continues to grow all the time. And many of these, they come from outside the United States. And so our cybersecurity goal, it's a simple one. No breaches of our system. And CEC's IT employees, they are some of the best and the brightest, and they employ the strongest cybersecurity protection tools that are available. See, every employee at CEC that uses our technology systems, they receive regular security training. And as a result of these factors, that's why CEC has never experienced a cybersecurity breach of any confidential member information, and we are fully intent on keeping that record intact. In growth, it's another big topic in Central Oregon. Our economy is definitely in an upward growth cycle right now. And we've experienced an increase in new connected accounts, and this is for the 4th consecutive year in a row now. Now, in 2015, we connected 522 new accounts. And sitting in your seats, you notice the slide up there. You probably can't see the numbers at the bottom there, but on the far left is 1970, and on the far right, the bottom is 2015. So, if you look back the normal economic cycles, in the late 70s, you can see where, remember, Central Oregon was booming, those of you that were here. We were connecting more than 1,600 new accounts in a year. Unbelievable growth. Then we had, of course, the severe recession. And then we see the uptick, ups and downs of the economy until we get to the mid-2000s, where we had another boom in Central Oregon, and we were connecting up over 1,300 new accounts. And then we had the Great Recession kick in. In 2011, we hit a low spot of 193 new connected accounts in 2011. And you can see for the last 4 years then, we've had an upward growth cycle. And that 522 new accounts in 2015, that was almost a 14% increase over 2014. And already through the first quarter of 2016, the number of new connects is outpacing 2015. And this kind of growth, it calls on us to really manage our skills, or our schedules, our inventories and our equipment with a lot of skill and efficiency. And healthy growth, it benefits all CEC members because it allows the co-op to take our fixed operating costs and we can share those over a greater number of members, and it increases the stability in those costs that are associated on your part of the bill. Now, talking about costs, the energy costs in your monthly bill, they reflect how much electricity you use and the cost of that electricity, what we buy from the Bonneville Power Administration. Now, it's really unfortunate, but continued increases in costs, they've pretty much become a predictable part of the Bonneville Power Administration's 2-year rate contracts. As October 1st last year, the BPA, they again increased their rates that they charge CEC and their 126 other Northwest utility customers. And this was the third BPA rate increase since October 2011. And the latest increase, it averaged 7.7% or 7.1% for electricity and 4.4% for transmission. Now, BPA's total increases since 2011 is nearly 24% for electricity and more than 15% for transmission. And this latest increase for CEC, we didn't have any other option but to increase our members' rates by 5.7% on January 1st. Now, this was just our third rate increase in 15 years, while it was BPA's third increase in 4 years. And nevertheless, the decision, when we have to increase rates, it's very difficult for the board of directors because we understand how it impacts members' lives. But because these rising energy costs, they're outside of our control, I give it to our employees because they're constantly striving and looking for ways that they can create efficiencies and manage costs that are within our control. Now, granted, BPA's increases, they're driven, they need to upgrade the aging hydropower system and the aging transmission system. But BPA also spent $782.3 million in 2014 funding the largest fish and wildlife restoration and protection program in the world. So 1/3 of the $27 million that we'll end up paying BPA in 2016, it's going to go towards funding these programs. But I'll tell you, even with the rate increases that we've experienced, the renewable and clean hydropower that we receive from BPA is still by far the best value of any resource out there. It's the best value for the money. Now, given the cost pressures that BPA faces, I can't guarantee that they're not going to increase their rates again in October 1st, 2017. And I can't guarantee that our rates aren't going to be impacted also. But I will guarantee that the board of directors, the employees, we're going to do everything within our power to minimize any impact to our members. And we'll do so without compromising the safety and the reliability of the power that we deliver to all of you. Now, there is no better business model for electric utilities than electric cooperatives. And there's two major pieces of powerful information that support my opinion. First of all, your electric rates, they're 30% lower than what is paid by Pacific Power customers. That's pretty significant. And second, we pay capital credits to our members where Pacific Power, they pay dividends to their stockholders who may or may not be a customer. Now, in December, and for the 15th consecutive year, your board of directors returned capital credits paying $1.4 million to more than 9,700 members. And this was the fourth largest payment of capital credits in the history of Central Electric. CEC, we've now paid capital credits in 32 of the last 35 years. And this is a pretty outstanding number, and it really shows the financial strength of your co-op. And financial strength is pretty essential to our ability to not only continue serving you on a daily basis, but also we have to manage the resources that are needed to confront or manage the changes that others are trying to impose on us. And this is one of the biggest challenges that we face today, and it's efforts of others to shape public policy and do it through us. And I guarantee you'll all agree with me when I say we're in a period of hyper-partisan politics in our country. And because of this, each year it takes more time that we try and reform existing bad policies, or we try and prevent new bad policy proposals from being approved. And whether it's at the local, the state, or the federal levels, government, they continue to attempt to diminish the democratic local control of our co-op by dictating how we operate. In many elected officials, they view ratepayers as a source of income by forcing taxes or fees or extra costs onto the cost of your electricity. Now, I've needed to testify twice in Washington, D.C. before a congressional committee on the excessive costs and the long delays at CEC and other utilities across the country that we face, and that's just to maintain our electrical system that cross federal lands. And this really is a pretty significant issue for CEC because 56% of our service territory falls within federally managed lands. Now, during my second appearance before Congress last year, I was asked if the federal land agencies, if they'd improved their service to us since my first testimony back in 2014. Now, it was pretty unfortunate, but my answer was a resounding no. The wheels of change, they turn very slowly in Washington, D.C., but finally, there does appear to be some relief on the issue that's now within sight. The House of Representatives, they have passed legislation, and that's legislation that we helped shape, and it's going to make these agencies more responsive. And we're confident, we're hopeful that the Senate's also going to pass this legislation in the near future. And then we had success at the state level during the 2015 Oregon legislative session. And we teamed up with the Oregon Rural Electric Cooperative Association, and we again stopped legislation that would have allowed counties to begin taxing utilities just to have our power poles and lines along the county roads. Something that's been there for years and years. But probably the most significant success was our ability to avoid solar energy legislation where the state would have dictated that all CEC members participate financially in solar energy. Now, talking about solar energy, even though the power that we provide to all of you is 96% carbon-free, special interests in the state of Oregon, they think it should be more. Now, not just in 2015, but in the last 3 legislative sessions, there were bills that proposed mandates that utilities use solar energy. Now, at the same time that these mandates were going on, public interest was also growing with solar energy, and the cost of these solar systems, you've heard, it's been decreasing. Now, with all this going on, it boosted a lot of interest among some of our members, and they requested CEC that we get involved in solar energy. Now, given all this activity in the legislature and increasing interest from CEC members, we thought the time was right to develop our own CEC community solar project. And I'll tell you what, the timing, it couldn't have been better. In January of this year, we flipped the switch on the state's first of its kind community solar project, and this is one that's supported entirely by members who voluntarily pay to participate. Now, because of our decision to get out in front of potential legislation and similar actions by other electric cooperatives, we were exempted from a solar mandate that was just signed into law by the governor on March 15th. Now, Pacific Power and Portland General Electric, they're now required to go out and develop community solar projects, and those costs are going to be passed on to all of their customers, and that's whether they want to participate or not. But instead, we were able to chart our own course in a responsible way with voluntary, not mandatory participation. Now, I want to focus my perspective on 2016 and some of the changes that we're currently facing and will be facing into the future. I think everybody knows that a policy-driven effort to promote solar energy is tax incentives, and I'm talking specifically about a 30% federal tax credit that's available. And as I mentioned before, this plus the improving technology that's decreased prices, it's increased the number of rooftop solar systems for people that want to self-generate electricity. Now, these self-generators, they almost always remain connected to the utility for backup power because they can't usually generate enough electricity to meet all their needs. And because CEC's rates are significantly lower than most utilities across the state and the country, the growth of self-generators on our system is really pretty modest. But we still need to make changes to ensure that self-generators, they're paying their fair share of the cost to use our electrical system. And I'm talking about that fixed cost portion of your bill, that fixed cost portion of service that doesn't change regardless of how much energy is bought and sold. Now, fixed costs, they include the materials, the equipment, and the people that are needed to run the co-op and deliver the electricity and ensure that it's safe and reliable. And the other major cost of electricity is, of course, your bill is the electricity itself. Now, the energy that a home uses each month, as you know, it varies based on lifestyle, weather, and the time of year. Now, a self-generator's goal is to use less CEC supplied electricity, and then during times when they generate more than they need, we're required by law to buy that from them. Now, they can't accomplish this goal without accessing our co-op's wires, our poles, our transformers, and our substations. And that's exactly why we need to ensure the costs of operating and maintaining our electric system, they are fairly shared among those members who self-generate and those who don't. And this summer, with the assistance of our Rate Design Advisory Committee, and that's composed of co-op members, just like all of you, we're going to be reviewing all of our rate structures and recommend any needed changes to the Board of Directors. And we'll keep our membership, keep all of you notified as we move through this process. Now, I've discussed the challenges that we're confronted with at the federal, the state levels of government. And now we're facing some costly and some pretty unfair policy proposals at the local government level as well. Now, Central Electric, as well as other utilities, we pay a pretty significant amount of money each year to cities, and that's in exchange for allowing us to place our power lines along, across, and under city streets. And beyond the money that we're already paying these cities, they're increasingly promoting policies that are aimed at using utilities as a way to raise revenue through taxes, fees, and really unfairly imposed cost burdens. And recently, this has become an issue with the city of Bend. Now, historically, when we need to go out and maintain or upgrade our power lines where a street or a sidewalk is impacted, we restore them to as good or better condition as before we went in. Now the city of Bend, they're proposing that utilities pave streets and upgrade sidewalks, and this is in areas where we're not even conducting any work. So these costs, they essentially become a street improvement tax that doesn't just impact the members that live within the city of Bend, it impacts all of our members. And there's another policy change that's being proposed by the city of Bend, and it's going to require our members that we pay the costs if utilities have to be relocated for school district projects or park and recreation district projects. Now, everybody knows these projects, these districts, they're funded by voter-approved bond issuances, and they pay entirely for the project. Now, forcing these costs onto CEC members, not only is it flat out wrong, but I call it a money grab. The cost of paving streets, sidewalk upgrades, and other public projects, they should be shared by the general public that they represent, not the membership of CEC. And if you think about it, most of you have multiple utilities, not just Central Electric. You have telephone, cable, and you may even have natural gas. You're going to be impacted multiple times over because these code changes impact everybody. And really, the reason I'm concerned is I realize that these city officials, they talk to each other. And a hidden tax or a fee that's successfully implemented in one community, what do you think will happen in another community? So that's why we're staying involved. Now, as I share these issues with you, it is extremely frustrating to see where government continues to overreach and they look for any method possible to extract money from our members. So truly, it's not surprising that the American public, we've lost a lot of faith in the government that we've traditionally relied an awful lot on. And this is an unfortunate reality, but I spend probably about 50% or more of my time now combating these approaches that essentially I see as a backdoor, imposing backdoor taxes on you, our members. Now, in the year ahead, we're going to be reaching out to you because we have to get you to join in the effort and bring your voice into the conversation. You see, it's becoming too easy for these officials. They can dismiss my voice as a single CEO. And you've all heard the saying that there's power in numbers, and that is true. When voters speak up, these officials will listen. And our likelihood of success, it grows considerably. So we will never relax in our fight to retain the local control and local decision making that has made this cooperative so successful for the past 75 years.